Marcy, Skylight, Gray, Cliff, and Redfield done. Now the long walk back to the lodge. 3:55 a.m., just signed in. Santanoni Range, let's go. The wind is whipping here in the Seward Range today. Just finished the Macomb slide and my legs are on fire. Well, I fell victim to the floating logs again. Made it to the top of East Dix. Peak number 3 of 5 for today here in the Dix Range. Avalanche Pass. On top of Rocky Peak Ridge. It's like a hurricane up here. Rain and wind here on Tabletop. Whiteface, number 6. Muddy day here on Street and Nye for number 7 and 8. Sunny and blue on Haystack. Algonquin, up in the clouds, number 18. Gothics, number 22. Panther, number 38. Allen, number 45. 7:12 a.m. Big Slide, Adirondack, 46er. You're listening to the 46 of 46 podcast. September 1st, 2018. Today was the day I put off until the very end. Allen Mountain was up next for number 45 here on my 15th High Peaks hike. After finishing work Friday night, I got in my car and once again drove from New York City straight through to the Allen Trailhead. Who wouldn't like a 14-hour workday followed by a 5-hour drive, right? Like last week, I stopped in Saratoga Springs at exit 15 on the way up there where I stocked up on some food and water for the day. After getting off the exit and while driving through the Adirondack back roads, I almost hit a small black bear that ran across the road in front of my car. Talk about a classic Adirondack scenario. And I finally arrived at the trailhead at 1:30 a.m. and I parked next to a number of other hikers also sleeping in their cars. So I got a few hours of shut-eye in the back of my van and I woke up at 4:50 a.m. to the sound of a couple hikers arriving and starting. What? No, this can't be. I'm always the first person to sign in for the day. Okay, it's time to get up and get going, I said to myself. Then as I was getting ready, another car arrived and another group started hiking. So I ended up being the third sign-in on the day, not the first. Oh well, I had a good run. Can't win them all. So it was 5:20 a.m., clicked my headlamp on, signed in, third on the day, and I was out and ready for the long walk through the woods to Allen. Oh, and did I mention it was pouring? Because it was. Quite hard, actually, despite only a 15% chance of rain that day. So between that and the narrow trails where the plants brush against your body, I was very wet very quickly. But I had a raincoat and rain pants on, but it was going to be a wet one. Allen is a very remote mountain deep in the Adirondack wilderness, and it requires a long 8-mile approach just to the base of the peak. The day would total around 18 miles with only 3,500 feet of elevation gain, but a lot of work for one peak. Allen Mountain, you're up next. This mountain gets a lot of slack, probably due to the long approach, but if I'm being honest, I really enjoyed the approach. The trail has lots of different sections with different vibes and different feels than any other mountain trails. Josh told me to pack my Crocs in my backpack because I'd be taking my boots off to cross some rivers today, but that turned out not to be the case, fortunately. Shortly after the East River Trail begins, you'll come to a great steel suspension bridge crossing over the Hudson River. One of 2 suspension bridges on the hike. A very fun little bridge to cross. Then about half a mile into the hike, you'll come to Lake Jimmy. I'm told the trail used to have a floating bridge to cross it, but now the trail just goes around the left side of the lake. It was dark out, so I couldn't see much at this point, especially with the rain coming down. Right after I made my way around the lake, I brushed against a lot of trees and plants and got extra wet due to the narrow trails at this point. And shortly after Lake Jimmy, I made it to the beginning of many old abandoned roads. I'm personally not sure if they're old logging roads or mining roads or both or neither, but regardless, they're old overgrown dirt roads, and you'll walk down a lot of them. I enjoyed them very much. Around a mile into the hike, I came to an old cabin in the woods. It looked abandoned, and since it was still dark out in the beginning of my day, I decided I'd check it out closer on the way back. It turns out this is the old Mount Adams Watchman's Cabin, and the trail junction to go up Mount Adams is just around this point. It would be easy to accidentally go onto the wrong trail out here, so it's very crucial to know your map and when to expect trail junctions and where you'll be going. Using a GPS or the All Trails app along with your map would be very helpful tools on this mountain in particular. They don't replace having and knowing your map though, so let that be known, but they're helpful tools in addition to the map. After passing the Mount Adams Junction, the trail is really a few miles of gravel and dirt roads, so it's very easy to follow and enjoyable in my opinion. Some of the trees and sections of the trail are cool, and you'll eventually see Allen poking out in the distance. For me, it was raining today, so I wasn't able to see Allen, unfortunately, myself, But since the trail passes through different ponds and rivers and into a cool open meadow and then back into the woods and then into another open meadow and so on, I found it to have a great vibe overall. All you Allen haters out there, I disagree with you. Not long into the hike, I passed the group who signed in just before me, right after I stepped over a large gate that was closed. You know, one of those gates that keeps cars or four-wheelers from driving in. Was I trying to pass both groups who signed in before me and beat them to the top today? Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't, but one group down and one to go. Maybe. Just under 4 miles into the trip, I came to a sign pointing me to go right to the Opalescent River crossing. There is another very cool wooden suspension bridge over this crossing, which used to just be a pure river crossing, so again, I didn't have any need for my Crocs, thankfully. After crossing the river, the trail is more of the same, walking along flat roads, some woods trails, and then I came to a trail junction with a trail heading towards Marcy. There are signs pointing to Marcy to the left, and a brown wooden sign with a yellow arrow pointing to the right, which is the beginning of the Allen Herd Path, so you go right. The trail continues to be more of the same, a mix of flat woods trails and old logging roads, until it comes out to a larger gravel road out of the woods. This was Opalescent Road. At this point, I couldn't tell which direction I was supposed to go in. So after checking out the area for a minute and noticing some small cairns, I realized I was just below the gravel pit and the second Allen Trail Register. Once you get to this road, take a left for about 100 feet or so, then you'll see the open gravel pit on your right. It looks like an old gravel parking lot of sorts. At the other end of the lot is the next trail register for Allen, and it was 7:10 a.m. at this point, 1 hour and 50 minutes from signing in to get to this second registry. I decided to drop my pack for a minute and change my socks since I was a bit damp for the day. The sun was trying to come out and the rain wasn't nearly as bad at this point. Or maybe I was just so used to it that a light drizzle didn't faze me anymore. One of the two. Regardless, I changed into a different pair of darn tough socks and carried on. After taking a couple bites of a Snickers bar, of course. I was now finished with the logging roads and into the woods for the remainder of the hike up Allen. The summit of High Peak number 45 was a mere 3.5 miles away from this point. The trail still doesn't gain elevation for a while and just winds and curves through the woods for a couple of miles. Some sections I found to be quite darker than usual due to the thickness of the forest out there. I even had to turn my headlamp back on for various sections. It was a little spooky today with the lack of light in the woods, the sounds of the forest, the rain. There's still quite a bit of flat woods walking before climbing up, so I continued weaving through the woods, up and down along the trails with various small brook crossings throughout, one of which being Skylight Brook. And shortly after Skylight Brook, I came to a cool little waterfall with a pool at the bottom, right next to a cairn marking the beginning of the climb up Allen. I finally made it to Allen Brook, where the herd path to the top begins. The trail from this point just goes up, up, and up, which is good because after the 8-mile approach, I was pretty ready to start climbing. The trail up involves a lot of slab and slide climbing and trying not to fall. And it didn't take long for me to experience the infamous red slime people always talk about when going up Allen. And I always thought people were exaggerating a bit about how slippery it was and figured they were just being overdramatic. But let me tell you, they aren't. Holy crap. This stuff is like ice when you step on it. It's super slippery. Thank God I had trekking poles because I feel like climbing this peak without them would be very difficult due to the slip factor, both going up and definitely coming down. My piece of advice is when you see the slime, don't immediately commit to your step. Take a second and audition it for a bit, put a little weight on your legs, see if you're going to slip, and then when you're good, now step. It'll add a little bit of time, but to me, anything is worth avoiding a fall. And I'd like to take this time to formally apologize to anyone who wrote about the slippery red slime that caused me to ignore it or roll my eyes. I was wrong. You were right. It's slippery as hell. With all the rock slab and slide climbing on this mountain, there's a good amount of finding the path of least resistance while you're hiking up. Around halfway up the slide, I noticed a cairn that had me going across the slide to the other side. This was a bit nerve-wracking due to the day's conditions, but I made it across without any real issue. Then I climbed the slide from the left side. Again, I climbed the slide from the left side. You'll know when you come to this point when you have to choose right or left. And while climbing down, I remember hearing people in the woods who chose the right side, so I'm not sure how it is over there, but I went left, but clearly people go right too, since they did. There was a lot of grabbing roots and holding on for dear life while climbing up. And there are some views while climbing up, so don't forget to turn around every so often and take it all in. Of course, those views weren't visible today thanks to the rain, but I could easily tell where views are to be had. I eventually made it up the slide and back onto the woods trail, taking me to the summit. And I reached the 4,040-foot fully wooded summit of Allen Mountain at 9:50 a.m., 4.5 hours into the day for high peak number 45. One more to go. I passed one man while climbing the slab, making me think, yes, I'll be the first on the summit despite not signing in first. But once I got to the summit, I saw a French-Canadian couple already up there hanging out. So, clearly I was wrong. I would pass the man again later in the day where I found out he was camping out here last night. Oh, of course he was. Forgot about that whole camping concept. I chatted with the Canadian couple up top for a bit and they asked me, "What number is this for you?" To which I quietly responded, 45. They were very enthusiastic that I was almost finished. The funny thing is, I had never been asked that question before by another hiker, and I would be asked multiple times throughout my hike down from many other hikers. It makes sense because likely the only people hiking Allen are people trying to become a 46er. With that in mind, I will say I felt a sense of camaraderie with the other hikers on this mountain today, more than I felt on any other peaks. It's like we're all on the same team, rooting for each other to be successful up Allen, not slip and fall, and to make it to 46. Everyone's working towards the same goal, and we all know how difficult that goal is. It was very cool. And once again, let the record show, I really dig Allen Mountain. Since I knew how long the hike out was going to be, I didn't stay up there for too long, and I started on my long trip out. I was a bit anxious about the hike down because while coming up some of the slippery sections, I said to myself, oof, this is going to be a bear to get down. And it definitely was. I started passing a few different groups of hikers on my way down, and another solo hiker, and the first question I'd ask them was, have you slipped yet? One group said one of them took a hard fall, but most of them answered something along the lines of, not yet, thank God. So while hiking this mountain, trying not to slip and fall is on many people's minds, as it should be. I was positive I'd take a fall or two on the way down, but thankfully, as I always say, slow and steady wins the race, and I made it off the mountain without any falls going up or down. It was a miracle. I was now back at the waterfall pool area with the cairn from earlier today. The Canadian couple up top passed me on the way down the mountain, and they were chatting with more hikers at the waterfall, and they told people, oh, this is number 45 for him. And the others shared in their excitement as well, which was very cool. More camaraderie. They all wished me good luck on Big Slide this Monday, and they congratulated me. Now that I was off the mountain and back on the flat woods trails, I started moving as fast as I could, and I soon came to the Allen Thunderbox. And if you're not familiar with the Thunderbox, it's basically a wooden toilet out in the open. Picture an outhouse without any walls. So you're just hiking along the trail, and then you come to the Thunderbox where someone's dropping a number 2 clean out in the open. Hey, how you doing? When nature calls, I answer, am I right? Am I right? There's no shame in using the Thunderbox. I mean, it is there for a reason. It's just unique. Anyways, I was going pretty quickly down the trail. I passed a couple people hiking in for the day. One group asked if the red slime was actually slippery, which I emphatically said, yes, it is very slippery. Walk slowly. I kept hustling down the trail and made it back through the woods and out to the second trail registry at the gravel pit. I decided at this point to grab a quick bite out of my backpack and carry on. I felt like I was officially off Allen Mountain now and I was back on the approach, so I had a small moment of celebration in the fact that I have one more peak to go. Of course, I still had about 5 miles or so to my car, but that's okay. I made it back across the wooden suspension bridge over the Opalescent and soon passed another solo hiker coming in for the day. I felt like he was a little far and a little late in the game to be at this point of the hike this late into the day, but he told me he has hiked the Dix Range in a day, which is a great hike, but still doesn't necessarily mean anything. Though after a quick chat and me asking if he had a headlamp and him responding no, I offered him mine, because I have 2, which he assured me he was okay and he wouldn't take it. All right, so we went our separate ways. Come prepared when you're hiking in the Adirondacks. This message brought to you by everybody. By this point, I was definitely mentally and physically ready for the hike to be over. I wanted to be home since I was basically running on fumes from Friday morning's 5 a.m. wake up, followed by the 14-hour workday, and then a 5-hour drive, 3 hours of sleep in my car at the trailhead, and then this hike. And I did the same thing last weekend. So I wanted to get home. So I started going as fast as I could comfortably once back on the gravel logging roads. It's a great spot to make up time. I soon made it back to the Mount Adams Trail Junction and the Mount Adams Watchman's Cabin. So now I decided to check it out. So I walked up to it, Scoped it out a little bit, but I got a strange cabin in the woods vibe when I noticed the door wide open.